Good afternoon and welcome to today's free Tech Gig webinar, Windows 8, Love It, Hate It, or It's Complicated. Unfortunately, a quick apology to the audience out there. You were expecting to hear your usual moderator, Mahini from Tech Gig. She's just had a few technical problems and she'll hopefully be joining us soon. But I'm afraid you've got the stunt moderator. My name is James New from Citrix GoToAssist. But thankfully, I'm not the star of the show. Our special guest, Ed Bott, is. So I will run through the normal introductions and housekeeping, and I'll be handing over to Ed. So hopefully you'll stick with us, even though it's not your usual voice moderating today. But today's webinar is sponsored by Citrix GoToAssist and powered today by Citrix GoToWebinar. Now, Microsoft's latest operating system, Windows 8, is one of the most polarizing tech products of all time. Some people love it, others hate it, and the naysayers have been highly vocal. So today we're joined for the next hour by Microsoft Windows expert Ed Bott. He's going to be explaining why Windows 8 is so controversial and what are the best implementation strategies for IT managers and consultants. Plus, of course, we'll be answering all your burning questions. So on behalf of Mahini and the team at TechGig, welcome to each and every one of you. As I say, my name's James New at Citrix GoToAssist. I'll be your deputy moderator for the time being. There's still quite a few people taking their seats in the back rows, so while they settle in, I'm just going to run through some housekeeping with you. Please do interact with us today. No need to take too many notes. You will be receiving a link within the day to the recording of the session. Plus, if you request it via the exit survey, an excellent complimentary companion white paper and handout of today's slides from today's guest speaker. There are two ways you can interact with us. The first is by using the questions pane to type in your thoughts, questions, and comments from time to time, and thank you to all of those that have given me a warm welcome already. Thank you for that. And of course, if you're on Twitter and you want to reach out to today's other webinar delegates, we'll be using the hashtag Win8Webinar, so feel free to join the conversation there during and after the event. If anyone does have any audio issues today, do note you can listen through your computer headphones or your speakers. And of course, within a toll-free phone number within India, simply note you can toggle to each option in the control panel, which you can see, which I'm demonstrating on the slide now. So you can toggle between those options. Now, without further ado, I'm very, very pleased to welcome to the virtual stage our special guest, Ed Bott. Ed's an award-winning technology writer with more than 2 decades experience writing for mainstream media outlets and online publications. He's served as editor of the US edition of PC Computing and managing editor of PC World. And he's also the author of no less than 25 books on Microsoft Windows and Office, including the recently released Windows 8 Essentials. And he's also a commentator with a very well-followed blog, The Blog Report. And you can also follow his daily rantings on Twitter, which I know are widely followed around the world. So without too much further delay, let's give him a warm virtual welcome. He's joining us from Santa Fe in New Mexico at the highly unsociable hour of 5:30 a.m. So hopefully you've had a coffee, Ed, and you're raring to go.
Thank you, James. I'm on my second cup, as it turns out. And I appreciate everyone joining us this morning or evening, whichever it is where you are. I've got what I hope will be a very interesting presentation today, and I know we want to start with a poll. I'd like to get a sense of what the audience is all about here. So if you're in a management role, tell me how many Windows PCs you manage in your organization. You've got a choice: 1 to 5, 6 to 25, 26 to 100, 101 to 250, or more than 250. I'd like to get a sense of large companies, small companies, or in between.
Great. I shall leave that poll open just for another 30 seconds. That's about 50% of you voted. So once you all vote, and if you're not familiar with the voting, you just simply click the little radio button next to the option which is most relevant to you on the screen. And then I can share those results with you all so you can see who else is in the virtual room. And to Vivek, who said just 1, but we'll put that in 1 to 5. So
exactly.
Excellent. So let me close that poll up. That's the critical mass of you voted, and I'm going to share those results on screen. So that's who else is with us today.
Good. Well, we've got a pretty good mix there. I'd say roughly Boy, roughly one third, one third, one third from the small single user small business to the medium business to the enterprise, and that's good because that's going to give us an opportunity to talk about the different flavors of Windows 8 and what they mean for different people in different roles, especially if you're in an IT role. So let's start with a little explanation of what Windows 8. It was released on October 26th, 2012. That is just a bit more than 6 months ago. And I've been writing about Windows for 2 decades now, since Windows 3.1 back in 1992. And this is probably the most radically different look and feel to Windows of any edition that I've seen in those 20 years. Probably the one that comes closest was Windows 95, which introduced things like the desktop and the start menu. This version of Windows is optimized for touchscreens. As you can see from the illustration that I've got there, you can reach out and touch those tiles on the start screen, or you can use the traditional input devices, the mouse and keyboard. And essentially what you have with Windows 8 is a transitional operating system where you have the old familiar Windows desktop and the new Windows start screen with its touch-friendly interface side by side. Now the reason that Windows 8 came into existence is because the PC industry as we know it is going through a fundamental transition right now. As it turns out, consumers and businesses are not buying as many PCs as they used to. I put together this chart on the right using some data from Gartner, a large IT analyst group, and you can see that over the past 5 years, year by year, the number of PCs that were shipped was increasing, usually in double-digit percentages, 13%, 14%. But over the last couple years, back in 2011, the number of shipments was only up 4%, and last year, for the first time in the more than a decade that Gartner has been keeping track of these numbers, the number of shipments of PCs worldwide was down 3%. And so far, in the first quarter of this year, PC sales are down even more, 13 to 14% over the same period last year. Now the reason for that is not because we're not using PCs anymore, rather it's that the definition of what constitutes a PC is changing. We're finding, especially with things like the popularity of tablets like the iPad, that those portable mobile devices, tablets, smartphones, and ultra-mobile PCs, things like Ultrabooks and Microsoft Surface, are the ones that are winning in the market today. Those are the ones that are increasing their share. The losers, the ones that are not shipping as many as they used to, are conventional desktop PCs, like the one I happen to be using right now, and heavy notebooks, those 5, 6, 8-pound desktop replacements that we carry around and do mainstream computing tasks on. So Windows 8 was designed for this new world, this new generation of device types. And Microsoft, instead of thinking of itself as the company that builds software that goes on conventional PCs, is instead reinventing itself as a company that is in the devices and services business. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to be building all of those devices itself, but rather that it's going to be building software for different kinds of devices. It's also going to be providing services such as Office 365, which is the new subscription-based version of Microsoft Office, SkyDrive, the online file storage capability that Microsoft has made available for free to consumers worldwide, and Outlook.com, which is the new version of Hotmail, which has been around for something like 17 years now. The big changes in Windows 8 that take advantage of these new device types are first and foremost that it's optimized for touch. It has improved power management capabilities. That's very important in mobile devices. you're used to carrying around a laptop and searching for a power outlet so you can plug it in. With a tablet or a smartphone, you want that device to last as close to all day as possible, and you don't want to interrupt yourself before lunchtime to try and plug in and recharge. There's a brand new app model and a new app store in Windows 8. And that's a very, very big change, because historically Windows programs come with an installer. You download them from somewhere, or you get them on a CD or a DVD, and that installer is able to make changes to the entire PC environment. In the new app model for Windows 8, the apps can only be delivered through the store, and they take up pretty much the entire screen, so they don't have window borders as the old style programs used to, and they're also highly restricted in the things that they can do. Now, that's a negative for some developers who have to sort of rethink the way that they build applications, but it's a big positive for security and for reliability. You know that if you download an app, that it's only going to be able to do a limited number of things. It's not going to be able to put a virus on your computer or interfere with the steady operation of your PC. And finally, Windows 8 has built-in connections to some of the online services that I talked about before. But the old Windows 7 desktop is still there, and that is the source of confusion. When people pick up a new Windows 8 PC, or they go and they buy an upgrade copy of Windows 8 and they put it on their old PC, the first reaction for people who don't know what they're getting into is confusion. And one of the things that I decided to look at, because I've read a lot from people who are angry and frustrated about Windows 8. So I wanted to try and get a sense of just how frustrated and how dissatisfied are people about this new operating system. And so I went to an interesting source. I went to Amazon.com, which has its own ratings and review system, and it's a nice consistent rating system, 1 star through 5 stars. 5 stars means you love it. 1 star means I hate this, and I hate it enough to take the time to write a negative review about it here. And so what I did was to go back to the upgrade editions of Windows 8, Windows 7, and Windows Vista and count up the number of ratings between 1 star and 5 stars. And as you can see there, the number of 1-star ratings, people who said, I really don't like Windows 8, is fairly high at 29%. But the other thing that's interesting about that number there is that if you look at the 4-star and 5-star ratings, the people who say, you know, this is pretty good or this is really excellent, those collectively add up to 50%. And that's where the title of this webinar comes from. Some people love it, some people hate it, and there aren't very many people in that middle ground. Now, the good news for Microsoft and the good news for people who are migrating from older versions of Windows to Windows 8 is that you know, the standard for versions of Windows that people really, really didn't like is Windows Vista. And I gathered those statistics too. As you can see, 42% of the people who bought an upgrade version of Windows Vista took the time to go back to Amazon.com and let their fellow customers know how much they hated it. Windows 8 isn't close to that standard, and in fact, the number of people who actually like it a lot is high enough that I think we can find, you know, there's that love-hate relationship there. I also put on the left, you've had a chance to read them by now, some of the text reviews that people left for the Windows 8 Upgrade Edition. And you know, when one person said, I heard people's frustration about 8, and I thought, it can't be that bad. I can learn. Wrong. But then if you look at that one at the bottom, you'll get the reaction that I've heard from a lot of people who says, it took 5 minutes to get used to no start button. I really don't miss it, and all my applications just work. There's the dichotomy in a nutshell there. Some people love it. Some people hate it. So what is it that people dislike about Windows 8? Where are the sources of frustration? Well, I'm going to go through those one by one here, and I've basically broken the list down into 5 items. We're going to start with the new Start screen. If you've used Windows for any length of time, you're familiar with the Start menu. The Start menu in Windows 8 is gone completely. It's not there anymore. It's replaced by this bright, bold, maybe too bold, and very colorful Start screen. The Start screen has these live tiles in it. Each one of those tiles, if you click or tap it on a touch screen, starts a program. Some of these tiles actually provide information about your calendar, about incoming mail messages, about news headlines, and so forth. But instead of going to a traditional menu and scrolling up and down in the menu, you scroll from left to right, as you can see from the scroll bar at the bottom of that screen. That's a shift in the way that things work, and something that's unfamiliar to a lot of people and takes some getting used to. The second item that confuses some people is that, like I said, the Windows desktop is still there. And if you look at this, I've put together a sort of traditional looking Windows desktop screen here. You can see there's 3 tiled windows on there. That's my dog, Mackie, in the window down in the corner there. And it all looks quite familiar except for one thing. There's no Start button. The Start button is gone. Now, there are some other slight differences as well. The transparent look and feel that was introduced with Vista and refined in Windows 7 is gone. So there's a very flat look to all of the elements in the new Windows 8 desktop. And if you look in the back there, you can see that there's Windows Explorer is now called File Explorer, and it has the same ribbon that you might be familiar with from Microsoft Office. But other than that, this is the Windows desktop, and once you get there, all the programs that you're used to using from the old Windows desktop work just fine in the new Windows, except for the absence of that Start button. Now, Windows 8 introduces some new ways of interacting with the user interface. So if you're used to using Windows 7 or Windows Vista or Windows XP, your way of interacting with the operating system is with the mouse and keyboard. You click a menu, you double-click an icon, you select by dragging the mouse around, and so forth. In Windows 8, there are a series of new gestures, and one of those is to swipe from the right. If you're on a touch screen, that's a fairly easy thing to do. You just take your finger and you swipe in from the right. If you're using a non-touch screen PC, you have to move your mouse up into the right corner until this thing called the charms bar appears, and then you move your mouse down and the charms bar materializes on the screen, and then you can click one of those 5 buttons to make something happen. If you click the settings charm, then you get a screen like this, and then you can choose change PC settings, and you get this new interface that has these big, bold, touch-friendly controls. Now, once you get used to this, you can learn how to swipe from the right and go to the upper left corner to change programs and swipe up from the bottom to get menus. But these are not gestures that anyone who's used Windows for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years is going to be familiar with. It requires some learning on the part of the user. I mentioned earlier that one of the big changes in Windows 8 is the new app model. Now, to introduce these apps to new customers, new owners of Windows 8 PCs, Microsoft included a selection of 20 Windows 8 apps that come with the operating system. Some of them are absolutely wonderful, in my opinion. The weather app is just great. The news and sports app have excellent information from around the world, and in fact they have an international focus to them, so that you can follow your favorite teams, whether you follow American football or English football, and cricket is there. So you've got a handful of applications of these new apps that are good, but a bunch of them are not that good. They were mediocre and half-baked in the initial release of Windows 8. In particular, the ones that people have complained about the most is the Mail app. And Mail is one of the key things that people want a new computer to do for them in the modern era. And the Mail app was, quite frankly, weak. Now, it was updated last month. It fixed some of the missing features in it. But still, if you're used to a full-featured mail program like Microsoft Outlook, you'll look at this Mail app and you'll go, where did all of my favorite features go? Other apps, like the Photos app that you see here, are missing some key features, and they're just difficult to use. And the thing that's worst about them for a new user is that they're set as the default, so that if you double-click on a picture from File Explorer, the new Photos app opens and you go, what do I do next? And that brings up the final complaint that people have about Windows 8, is that you've got this old Windows and this new Windows. And they're not just side by side. They're sometimes, now you see them and now you don't. Now, I've got an example here that sort of illustrates the problem. Internet Explorer 10 is built into Windows 8, but it comes in two different versions. One is the version that you know from your desktop. That version has tabs. It allows you to use plugins like Silverlight or a password manager such as RoboForm, if that's something that you use. It has the menus, and you can control your favorites by clicking the star icon. Very, very familiar set of interface controls. But if you click a tile on the start screen in Windows 8 that goes to a web page, it takes you to the new immersive Internet Explorer. And this is the one that I'm showing here. Now, as you can see, there's no window borders. I've actually swiped down from the top to show you where the tabs are, but if I had just opened that one page, you wouldn't even see the tabs there because they're not visible at all. You could have as many as 10 tabs open at a time, but you don't see them until you use the secret hidden gesture that makes this tabs bar visible. And the address bar is at the bottom of the screen rather than at the top, which is where you're used to seeing it in every other browser that we've used for the last 20 years. And the only plugin that you can use in this immersive Internet Explorer is Adobe Flash. Any other plugins that you use, any kind of ActiveX control, simply don't work. So if you find yourself going back and forth between this version of Internet Explorer and the old style version of Internet Explorer, it can be very jarring and confusing, especially if you didn't realize that this was what was happening. So with all those things that people don't like about Windows 8, what is there that does recommend it? Why should someone even consider upgrading? Well, actually, there's a lot of good, solid, fundamental engineering work that's gone into Windows 8. And I want to sort of very briefly make the case for Windows 8 here so that you understand some of what's in there and some of what you can look forward to if you buy a new PC with Windows 8 or if you go through the upgrade cycle in your home or business. First of all, one of the things that is a transformation for me, it's almost a miracle, is the way that you can synchronize files and settings between devices. I have, of course, now I'm a tech journalist, and so I have an entire office full of computers, but I think most people have probably a desktop PC at home or in the office, and maybe a laptop they carry around, and maybe now or sometime in the next year or two, you're going to have a tablet, a Windows 8 tablet that you're going to be carrying around also. And if you sign into those devices with your Microsoft account, the thing that used to be called a Windows Live ID, you use your email address and your password, that synchronizes your files using SkyDrive and your settings, things like your the image that you see on your desktop, your saved passwords for logging into Wi-Fi hotspots, your favorites in Internet Explorer. All of those things just roam with you from computer to computer. And so when you go to a new computer, the documents and files that you used on your desktop are available for you to use on your notebook or on your tablet as well. There's some fundamental engineering changes in Windows 8 as well. Partly those go with new types of hardware. The old BIOS, the thing that we've used on PCs for a couple of decades, 3 decades now, is disappearing in favor of a new standard called UEFI. And if you get a new PC that uses UEFI, it starts up in less than 10 seconds, and it can resume from sleep in a matter of 1 to 2 seconds. So that means that you can set down your notebook, you pick it back up again, you open the lid, and you're ready to go straight to work again. And that's unlike a lot of the versions of Windows that we've used over the last decade, where you'd sometimes have to wait a minute or 2 or 3 for your PC to start, and you might have to wait 20 or 30 seconds for it to resume from sleep. Of course, it is an excellent experience on touch-capable hardware, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But if you use Windows 8 on a touchscreen PC, the interface makes a lot of sense. If your only experience with it is an upgrade on an older system that has only a mouse and keyboard to work with, the experience is a little different. So I would encourage you, if you have a way to go and try Windows 8 on a touchscreen PC, do that so you can get a sense of how it works. The Windows 8 comes in only 2 versions. There's Windows 8, the standard version, the one that comes with most new PCs, and then Windows 8 Pro. And Windows 8 Pro has a new feature in it that I think is a killer feature, especially if you're an IT professional or an enthusiast. Hyper-V, that's virtualization software that allows you to install Windows or Linux in a virtual machine, is built into Windows 8 Pro. And you can use that to test software in a virtual machine so that it doesn't corrupt your working computer. If the program doesn't work the way you expect it to, you just blast it out of the virtual machine and your computer continues working the way it should. You can also use this as a way to continue using programs that might be incompatible with Windows 8. So if you have a program that runs only on Windows XP, then you can run Windows XP in a virtual machine on your Windows 8 Pro machine, use that program in the virtual machine, and not have to worry about having to keep a separate computer somewhere running Windows XP. And finally, and this is the irony of it all, is that every program, with a few minor exceptions, but every program that runs on Windows 7 will run on Windows 8 as well. Now, you'll need to get upgrades for things like antivirus software and disk utilities, and anything that works at a low level with the hardware needs to be updated for Windows 8. But for the most part, every other program that you use with Windows 7 runs with Windows 8. You just get more. You get the new Windows that comes with it. Okay, so yesterday, as it turns out, several Microsoft executives spoke in public for the first time about an upcoming release, an upcoming important update for Windows 8. And this is a big deal. This is a big change for Microsoft because previously, as you probably know, new versions of Windows came out roughly every 3 years. So, Windows Vista came out in 2006. Windows 7 came out in 2009. Windows 8 came out in 2012. But with Windows 8, Microsoft has committed to a much faster cadence of updates. The old Windows was every 3 years. The new Windows is going to have updates every year. And that's going to mean not that you get a brand new version of Windows once a year that you have to pay for and learn all over again, but instead that Microsoft can take feedback like the things that I already listed that people have said they don't like about Windows 8, and they can address that feedback. And they're going to do that with an update this summer probably to be called Windows 8.1, but codenamed Windows Blue. And some of the screenshots from this new update have already begun to appear on the web. So one of the things that you can see in this screenshot, which I took from Engadget.com, if you look there right in the middle of the start screen, the second column there, you can see there's a much smaller icon. So instead of having 2 sizes of tiles on the start screen, you're going to have 3 sizes of tiles. And that means you can put, for things like utilities that you use regularly, you can fill your start screen with small icon-sized things, very similar to the way that people clutter up their Windows desktop with small icons to help them find and launch programs. But there's also going to be some other bigger changes that are coming in Windows 8.1. Now these are all rumors at this point, so take them with a grain of salt. We won't know until June when Microsoft makes this software publicly available to developers for the first time what's actually in them. But I think it's reasonable to expect that you're going to see some new apps. And this is a screenshot that I took from a site called Pure Infotech. And you can see there's an alarms app, there's a calculator, there's a sound recorder, there's a new movie program that's going to be there. So in addition to those 20 apps that were in the original release of Windows 8, there's going to be some more apps. In addition to the 60,000 or so apps that you can get from the Windows 8 store now. But much more importantly, in response to that negative feedback that customers have been giving to Microsoft, they're going to be introducing probably a boot to desktop option, so that if you say, look, I like Windows 8, but I just want to continue working in the traditional Windows desktop, and when I start up Windows, I want it to go to the desktop. Your prayers have been answered. You're going to be able to do that. Something like the Start menu is going to appear, although it may only be a Start button. One of the complaints that people had was because they took away the Start button, people who saw Windows 8 for the first time said, okay, here I am on the desktop, now what do I do? Where do I click? So at the very minimum, they're going to put something that looks like a Start button back on the desktop, so that you can click that and it'll take you to the Start screen and you can say, aha, that's how it works. And finally, in the current version of Windows 8, there's only 2 sizes that you can put Windows apps in. One is full screen, and the other is either a small strip along the side or the portion that is alongside that small strip. With Windows 8.1, you'll be able to put 2 Windows 8 apps side by side, so that if you have a big monitor, you can have 2 of these immersive apps side by side, and you can look at a PDF file on one side and work in a web browser on the other side. So that's a big change that they're going to be making. I want to take a quick stop right now and ask everyone when you plan to begin migrating to Windows 8.
Excellent stuff, Ed. We've got lots of questions coming in, but I think we'll skip through the poll, share those results, and we'll save them for the end, because I know you are going to cover off some of those questions in the next section. So. Excellent. That's about 50% of people voted. I'm just going to leave that open for a few more seconds. Actually, some very interesting questions coming in, which I wasn't going to take, but around gaming on Windows 8. I'm not a gamer, so I can't answer those ones in the questions pane. Is it a superior gaming experience, or is it much of the same?
Well, it's from a hardcore gamer's perspective, it's mostly better, although there are some compatibility issues that people have told me about.
Yes.
The actual big improvement is for casual gaming. So the new app environment allows for things like Angry Birds and Cut the Rope and Plants vs. Zombies, those kind of things that are designed to run on tablets and entertain you while you're in a waiting room or waiting for your flight to take off from the airport, and you can do that on a tablet using your finger. So the casual gaming is improved. Hardcore gaming is some better, some worse. And a lot of that has to do with video drivers, of course.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So let's share those results on screen. And there we go. We did extend the first one to already happening and presently evaluating. And look at our audience. There's quite a few people, obviously, that are already on Windows 8. So how does that stack up, do you think, against the rest of the world?
This is a very enthusiastic crowd. I'm delighted to see this. When I spoke with a group from the UK last week that had more of a focus on large IT organizations, and the more than 2 years or within 2 years group tended to dominate there. And so I'll get to the reasons for that in a minute. But this is, I think we've got on the love it, hate it continuum, I think we have more of the love it group in this audience. And so I'm glad to hear that.
Excellent. Let's take those away.
Okay. Okay, so I mentioned hardware, and really the big story about Windows 8 is about hardware. And so the good news about Windows 8 is that there's a lot of new forms of hardware coming out that really take advantage of the new features in it. Some of them are pure tablets. I've got a picture of one on the right here that I think is really interesting. And you have to sort of look closely at it to get a sense of how it works. But that tablet on the lower right there, that's snapped into a holder, a kind of docking station. But you can pick it up and you can pull it out of that docking station and carry it around with you, and it's actually the same size as an iPad, but about half a pound lighter, and it runs all of your Windows applications using an Atom processor. You put it back in the stand, and it has, as you can see, that little easel behind it that allows you to prop it up on your desktop. I have something very much like this on my desktop, and I use it as sort of a reminder and a music machine during the day. I can just keep my music app open and play music from it, so I don't have to worry about running music on my regular desktop PC. There are Ultrabooks that are coming out. Ultrabooks have been around for a year or two now. Ultrabooks are machines that are 3.5 pounds or less, very, very thin, have a long battery life. The Ultrabooks are coming with and without touch features. I would strongly say to anybody who's using Windows 8, don't even think about getting a new notebook that doesn't have a touch screen. And if you're on the fence, then you're better off waiting for another 3 months or 6 months or till the end of the year, when a whole bunch of new devices are going to be coming out, and see what's coming out. But I wouldn't invest in a new non-touch PC right now that runs Windows 8. You're going to see hybrid tablets and notebooks. Some really interesting configurations in this category of not just things like this Acer here, but Samsung makes something called the Smart PC, which is a tablet that snaps into a keyboard module. HP has the NVX2 that also snaps into a keyboard module that has an extra battery in it, so you can get 14 hours of battery life on this device. When it's snapped into the keyboard, it looks like a notebook. When you unsnap it from the keyboard, it works like a tablet. And you're also getting a new generation of all-in-one desktop PCs that have touch capabilities as well. And remember, you don't have to use the touch features as your only way of interacting with Windows 8. You still get to use the keyboard, you still get to use the mouse. Touch is another way of interacting with it. It's an additional way, not the only way. Then, of course, Microsoft has its new Surface devices, the Surface RT and the Surface Pro, and we know that there's going to be new Surface devices coming out later this year, including probably a 7 or 8 inch tablet, something that's the size of the iPad Mini or the Kindle Fire. And most importantly, you're going to have some more choices in CPUs, especially at the end of the year. Intel has a new PC generation coming out called the Haswell. And what's interesting about the Haswell is that it's going to have the same or equivalent level of power as the i5, so that you can do very powerful PC-based activities on it, but it's going to have the battery life that you expect from the Atom or from an ARM-based processor. So it means you can have a real PC that's going to last you all day long. Now, if you're in a business environment, if you have a small business, a medium-sized business, or an enterprise, how much training are your employees going to need? A lot of that depends on their level of sophistication. For most of the people, I suspect, that are listening to me today, your PC enthusiasts, your early adopters, you'll be able to pick this stuff up in no time. I've found that somebody who is used to using PCs and used to learning new things, the adjustment takes only a week or so. But for people who are fearful of PCs, fearful of new things, and who just want to learn how to do something, maybe they write down their instructions on a Post-it note and stick it to their PC monitor, they're going to need to learn the difference between the Start menu and the Start screen, new mouse gestures. If they don't have a touch-ready device, it's going to be even more confusing for them. So you're going to have to help them get used to those shifts between the new full-screen Windows 8 experience and the old-style Windows desktop. And in short, if you spend most of your time on the desktop, it's going to involve some trade-offs. So the big question, the final conclusion here is, should you dive in now, wait, or skip it? Well, I think, as the poll indicated, most of the people in this crowd have already made the decision that you're ready to dive in now or very soon in the next few months. That's not the way the market as a whole is going. As I mentioned, the real theme of this, Windows 8 is a polarizing release. There are a lot of people who don't like it. But I think if you accept the changes, if you understand the reasons for them, then it's worth it. And it's especially appealing if you get Windows 8 on a new touchscreen device. The good news is we know that there's updates coming later this year, this summer in preview and before holiday season this year in a final release of Windows 8.1. And any device that you buy today running Windows 8 will take advantage of those updates. But there's no downside to waiting. If you have an organization or a business that runs on Windows 7 will be fully supported until the year 2015, and it will be in what Microsoft calls its extended support mode until the year 2020. So if you want to stick with Windows 7, if you want to wait and see what happens with Windows 8 and maybe even wait until Windows 9 or Windows 10, there's no downside to doing so. You can stick with Windows 7 and all of your software will continue to work. So one additional poll, I have a feeling I know what the answer to this is like, but what do you expect your PCs to be running in 2016, a year after Windows 7 goes out of mainstream support? And maybe while we're waiting for that, we can take some questions, James.
Indeed, plenty of questions coming in. And since I am the stunt moderator today, I apologize in advance if I pick one of those questions where everyone says, oh, that's an easy one. Let's start with this question from Jagannath. Ed, he just wants to know, he's about to begin installing Windows 8. Is there anything that's going to freak him out in terms of the installation that's just a little bit different to the norm?
That's a really good question. There's two things that I would say. Number one, Microsoft has an upgrade assistant as part of the online upgrade, and absolutely positively run that first. It will tell you about any devices or drivers or software that you have that's incompatible, and it will actually walk you through uninstalling or updating those things so that you don't run into trouble. That's It's a great question, and you will avoid a lot of headaches if you do that. And I think the second thing to do is to make sure that you sign in using a Microsoft account, because that's where you're going to get the benefit of seeing the connections to things like SkyDrive and your Facebook account and Twitter account and such. But run that Upgrade Assistant and you won't have anything that freaks you out.
Excellent. Well, we're going to dive into a lot more questions. So before we do, I just thought I'd share those results of the poll on screen. And obviously, you were right. 56%, mostly Windows 8. That's pretty convincing, I would say.
Yeah, and I think it might be, if we look at it, it might be Windows 8.2 or even Windows 9 by then. But I fully expect Windows 9 to be, Windows 9 will be to Windows 8 as Windows 7 was to Windows Vista, a cleaner, nicer, more mature version of it.
Excellent. And as promised, let's dive into some more of those questions, which are coming in thick and fast, so we'll get through as many as we can.
Great.
Anagathan, and I apologize again for pronunciation. I am not working on the biggest screen possible today. How about the migration from older versions of Windows like XP to Windows 8? Does that present any issues?
There isn't a direct upgrade path from those. I've got somewhere on my website, and you're welcome to send me this question via Twitter at Ed Bott, and I'll find the link for you on it. But basically, if you're updating from an older version, you're going to have to do what's called a clean or custom installation. The real problem with updating from Windows XP is that Windows XP is a 32-bit operating system, and Windows 8 is mostly a 64-bit operating system. On modern hardware, you probably want to run the 64-bit version of Windows 8, and you can't upgrade over a 32-bit version. So you have to pretty much do a clean install. That means backing up your data files and getting your programs together and pretty much starting with a clean install.
Great stuff. Pankaj just wants to confirm, does Windows 8 have a server edition?
Windows 8 does have a server edition, but it has a different name. Windows Server 2012 is the equivalent of Windows 8. It has the same shell and a similar sort of tile-based user interface.
Great stuff. And just on the version questions, getting through all those first, Razik is just saying, so just to confirm, are there two versions of Windows 8, one for desktop and another for touch?
No.
It's just the one.
No matter which, you install the same version of Windows 8 on any PC. If that device has touch capabilities, you can take advantage of them. If it doesn't have touch capabilities, then you use your mouse and keyboard, and there's nothing you can't do. You just need to learn a slightly different set of gestures. But there's touch is a feature that's enabled if you have the hardware. By the way, you can add things like mice and touchpads to a conventional Windows PC. So I have like a Logitech 650, a T650 touchpad, and you plug that into a conventional Windows 7 PC, and you get the touch capabilities on it without having a touch screen. So it's pretty cool.
Sounds pretty good indeed. And Balaj is just saying here, which tools can be used to develop the apps for Windows 8? He's currently using Studio 2007, Visual Studio 2007. Is that still applicable?
No, you need to, there's a new set. I'm not a developer, so I'll defer on the details there. But there's some great developer resources available, and there's a developer conference coming up this June in the U.S. and all of the sessions, I believe, are going to be webcast. So if you look for BuildWin, BuildWin, I think it's buildwin.com, but it's the Microsoft Build Conference, has a lot of that information. But it's a Visual Studio. The latest version of Visual Studio is what you need to be using to develop apps for Windows 8. There's also some cross-platform tools that you can use. Xamarin, Xamarin, is one that allows you to build apps that will run not just on Windows 8 but on other platforms as well. But Visual Studio, and go to Microsoft and look for their information for developers, and you'll find a tremendous amount of information.
Great stuff. You obviously said hardware was a big thing, and Satish is just asking, he's installed Windows 8 on his common PC, but he's thinking if he installs it on his all singing all dancing Alienware one, is it going to be a superior experience?
In a lot of respects, it will be. The Alienware hardware. Now, I'm not sure whether it's a desktop or a notebook. On a desktop, I think if you already know the Windows 8 interface, you're going to really appreciate the changes. The system will feel a lot faster. If it's a notebook, it's very important to make sure that you use that upgrade advisor to check compatibility first, and make sure that you have drivers and utilities to enable the unique features of your notebook. Because in a lot of cases, the hardware will be some hardware, especially on older systems, isn't going to work as well as it should. So check out the hardware support for notebooks first, but on a desktop, dive in.
Excellent. We haven't talked about price. Nishat's just asking about pricing. Obviously, pricing differs all around the world, but relatively to Windows 7, what's the sort of disparity?
Well, if you, unfortunately, Microsoft had a really great introductory offer for the first 3 months that Windows 8 was out. You could get Windows 8 Pro upgrade in the U.S. for $40 and an equivalent, which amazingly low price, and equivalent offers around the world. That offer is over, unfortunately, and so now the best way to get Windows 8 is with a new PC. If you're doing an upgrade, in the U.S., the upgrade price for Windows 8 is around $100. For Windows 8 Pro is around $200. If you're an enthusiast or an IT professional, I would say the thing to look at is a TechNet subscription. TechNet subscription gives you the multiple licenses to use Windows 8 and a whole bunch of other software, including Microsoft Office, and for evaluation purposes, but you're allowed to evaluate it on your everyday PC, and the cost of that is only a little bit more than the cost of a Windows 8 Pro upgrade, but it gives you more flexibility. So if you're an IT pro or a tech enthusiast, look into a TechNet subscription, and you'll get the best bang for your buck there.
Excellent. And Surav's asking about security of Windows 8. Has it drastically improved, and is it better than that of Linux?
Well, drastically improved. I would say there are some fundamental improvements in Windows 8 over Windows 7, which was already pretty good. There's an improvement in the boot process that makes it much safer from these horrible things called rootkits that can take over your PC without you even knowing it. And those work on new hardware. There are some very good, solid security features in the operating system itself. Windows Defender, which is the new name of Microsoft Security Essentials, is built into the operating system. So you have antivirus software in Windows 8. You can replace it with something else if you want to, but antivirus software is built in. Is it better than Linux? I would say that in the modern computing environment, if you know what you're doing and you set up a new Mac or a new Linux system or a new Windows PC, you're in very good shape, and most of the things that are going to happen to you are going to happen because of social engineering. Somebody convinces you to run a piece of software that you shouldn't. But if you stay up to date with any of those operating systems, you're going to stay secure.
Excellent. You're doing very well to get through this many questions at it's nearly 6:30 a.m. your time, Ed. So I'm going to squeeze, but obviously I'll save a couple of the hard ones till last. Balari's just asking, here's kind of some doubts about the kinds of apps that Microsoft's going to provide for tablet versions of Windows 8. His organization have a variety of apps available in Android-based operating systems. Does Windows 8 give the users any freedom in using Android-based apps? Because he doesn't really want to lose what he's got if he switches to Windows 8.
Right. That's a really interesting question. There's a program, I'm trying to remember the name of it, that actually allows you to run Android apps on a Windows PC. And if you send me a note on Twitter or go to edbott.com and to my weblog there, up in the upper right is a little link called Contact Me. You can click that and send me a note, and I'll see if I can find that. But there is a utility that you can use that will allow you to run Android apps on a Windows PC. Now, having said that, many of the apps that you need are available in Windows 8 versions now. But you're going to see a lot more coming out middle of this year, end of this year. The selection is greater. The selection is greatest for the iPad and iPhone today. It's a lesser selection, but still a large selection for Android devices and a much smaller selection for Windows 8. So Windows 8 has a way to go to catch up, but a lot of that catching up is going to happen between now and the end of this year, a year from now.
Excellent. Rahim was just asking, because we talked about obviously user training and adoption, is there a way to revert to Windows 7 from Windows 8?
There is not. Once you install Windows 8, the only way to go back to Windows 7 is to restore your backup. Of course, everyone knows they back up their entire system before you do an upgrade like that, right? But if you want to try it, out, the easiest way to do it is to do so in a virtual machine. Now, I will say, if you have Windows 8 Pro and you want to go back to Windows 7, you could put Windows 7 in a virtual machine on your Windows 8 PC, and in essence, you've gone back. So you're getting all the advantages of Windows 8, but you're using Windows 7. So that's an option for a more sophisticated user. But for anyone else, if you look at it and you say, I tried it, I don't like it, I want to go back, the only way to do that is to restore a backup or reinstall Windows 7. You can't just uninstall it.
Excellent. Thank you for all those wonderful questions. I have to say, there are hundreds more coming in, but we've got some great resources we can follow up with, certainly, and we'll obviously share all this feedback with Ed and ourselves at Citrix to see if we can't answer some more of those questions. But I think you've got through a fair lick there, Ed, so thank you for that, and thanks again to all of you for all those wonderful questions. Before we wrap today's webinar, I just obviously want to bring your attention to the exit survey. The exit survey will pop up in a new browser window when you leave the webinar. You will all automatically receive a link to a recording of today's session a little later in the day. However, you can also request via the exit survey, as you give us some feedback on today's session, which we would dearly love. You can request the handout version of today's presentation, plus a white paper that Ed's kindly put together for us here at GoToAssist. What IT pros need to know about Windows 8, just the FAQs. You can also request a free trial of Citrix GoToAssist, service desk monitoring and remote support tools, and you can access a special GoTo subscription offer of the first 2 months of your subscription on any of our Assist, meeting, webinar or training products, before 17th of May. So do look out for the exit survey as you leave us. We'd really like your feedback, suggestions, comments for further webinars. And of course, any questions that we didn't quite get to today, we can take a look over those. As I say, we do urge you to give GoToAssist a test drive. It's a really powerful cloud-based set of support tools to easily support people and technology anywhere and anytime. And of course, thanks to Ed for getting up early for us. I'm sure he's pleased he's done it now that he's seen the adoption curve in India is actually ahead of the global curve.
Thanks so much, James. I really appreciate you being a host, and thanks to everyone for attending. And as I said, you're welcome to contact me on Twitter or via my website. I'm happy to take questions and interact with any of you. Appreciate you being an attendee today.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you coming on board and interacting and being such a lively audience. And once again, apologies I wasn't your regular moderator, but I enjoyed it nevertheless. So obviously it's getting late your time now, so I will leave you to hopefully leave the office if you've not already done so. And thanks again. Have a great rest of the day. Bye, everyone.